Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. Good morning, Aurora. The time is 9:01 a.m. and you are listening to and watching Good Morning Aurora, the second largest city's first daily news podcast. And it's Monday. We have a great guest this morning. Our guest is returning friend and guest on this program, State's Attorney Jamie Monster. How are you?
I'm good. Good morning to you.
Good morning to you as well. We've got a lot to talk about, but as we were starting with and as we began the program, you and I sitting here before the mics came on, you were in your first year of your second term.
Yes, correct.
How's it feel?
It feels good. Just to look back on all the stuff we've done in the office and to know what we have continuing to go during my second term.
Right.
I love it. I'm excited about everything that we're doing and what we're going to be able to accomplish.
And, from your first term to now, how do you feel that the time has been moving? Has it been a blur to you?
It has been. Just kind of looking back at all the cases that we've had, the initiatives that we've put forth. It's so strange to know that I've done 5 years as the state's attorney here in Kane County.
Right.
So it does feel like a blur, but we've accomplished a lot during that time period, and we have so many more goals for the future.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So the first thing that we'll be talking about today are changes to the Illinois Domestic Violence Act, specifically Kenton's Law, which I was unfamiliar with. What is Kenton Law? Let's detail some of those new changes.
Sure. So the Illinois Domestic Violence Act was passed in 1986, so a long time ago. And the concept behind it is they wanted to mandate certain things happening with domestic violence cases. So back then, when police were called because of a domestic violence situation, most of the time the officers were not making arrests because it was considered a family problem, something that they should handle themselves. Well, that's obviously not the way to protect victims, and it's not the way to protect people who are going to continue to be victims because they're in the domestic violence situation.
Right.
So that's great. It mandated arrests, and it completely changed the way that we arrest and prosecute in terms of domestic violence cases. However, the big difference that we created with Kenton's Law is treating juveniles in a different way than adults, because juveniles were considered the same if they were committing domestic violence as adults, but that's not the way it should be. When an adult is committing domestic violence, it's typically because of power and control.
Right.
When a juvenile is committing domestic violence, it's usually because it's a one-off, an isolated incident. There's some sort of family chaos that's going on, such as addiction issues or maybe even domestic violence. There is defensiveness, which means maybe the kid is defending himself, herself from another parent or maybe even another family member. And then there's that escalating behavior, which could get into power and control.
Sure.
In most of those situations, an arrest should not happen because an arrest is going to be a further trauma to the juvenile because they're going to be arrested, taken to the police station, held over for our juvenile justice center, and possibly stay in a number of days before they even get to their detention hearing to see whether or not they're going to stay.
They could potentially be released to the same environment or back home when they do get released.
Yes.
Okay.
And in the meantime, you haven't given any services, any treatment, anything to kind of help with the situation. So the reason why we went forward with Kenton's Law was because juveniles need to be treated differently. Adults, mandated arrest. Juveniles, the police officers should be able to use their discretion for that. And so 3 years ago, I proposed this legislation to Matt Hansen, our state representative. And we were not successful the first couple of years moving it along, and finally this last year we were. And that, I believe, is due in large part to a teenage boy named Kenton who went through that situation where he had a physical fight with his brother. Now, he was the older brother, so of course he got the better of his younger brother. Police were called. He was arrested. He was brought to the juvenile detention center. He actually had a mental health breakdown as a result of it because it was a fight with his brother, and now he's through the legal system. And so I met him through his school resource officer. He told me his story. He gave me permission to use his story to talk to the legislators, and we were able to pass it. And now the Illinois Domestic Violence Act allows police officers to use their discretion to not arrest a juvenile in that situation.
That's a very positive outcome, and looks like leading to more positive outcomes with it now being enshrined in law.
Yes, absolutely, because now they can actually refer kids to services, refer families to services instead of doing an arrest.
Right. Now, that's powerful, and as we know, and as the community knows too, we've also been dealing with aggravated or immigration tactics, ICE tactics in the community. Now, so coming back on the Domestic Violence Act law, kind of piggyback the same topic, what new changes have been made to that when it comes to ICE in our community? We talked about the Kane County Board now enshrining some things in law. What changes have been made to that as well?
So the Kane County Board passed a resolution that prohibits ICE from being able to use county property to basically stage for any type of immigration enforcement. And that is something that the county can do because you cannot use our property without our permission.
Right.
So you certainly can't commandeer it. And so that's the law that we're basing this on, is you cannot take our property to do something without our permission.
Right.
And because we have things like the Trust Act in place that prohibit law enforcement from being able to assist, we have to make sure that we're all compliant with the law.
Right.
And so that was passed probably a couple weeks ago, if memory serves. So
Okay.
that is now in enforcement now, where if somebody sees that, they can report that to the county board, not to the
Right.
police, but to the county board. And then the county board can then take measures at some point to possibly sue the federal government if they think that their property has been taken.
A potential long shot, but then making that accountability would still be
Correct.
the way to go. Also, though, too, as well, when it comes to these, the immigration enforcement, everything like that, is there a way for folks to report violations of the Trust Act or the Voices Act? And is the Voices Act pertinent in this conversation, too?
No, the Voices Act more deals with immigration in terms of when a person applies for, they're applying for citizenship because they're possibly a victim of a crime or they were a witness to a crime that goes through that way. There has to be a mechanism that was put in place for them to appeal it if, for example, my office, because we sign these U visas routinely. If we deny that because we don't believe the person fits the criteria, there's an appeal process to it.
Okay.
But to answer your question, for the Trust Act, there is the Attorney General's office of whom they would have to do that. They have a whole website on it. They have an email address where you can submit potential violations of the Trust Act, and then they're the ones who are investigating it.
Okay. 9:08 is the time if you're just joining us. Good morning to you all. We are here with Kane County State's Attorney Jamie Mosser going over some of the 2025 recaps and highlights. And this is the first year of her second term. Glad to have her on the program. So let's go into something that recently was a great success with the office and with Aurora University. That was the Human Trafficking Summit,
Yes.
which was great. Now, the Kane County State's Attorney's Office has a Human Trafficking Unit, and that was established this year. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
Let's talk about it and its successes.
So I'm really excited about this because it started off with a grant from Senator Linda Holmes, who is down here in Aurora, who is a big supporter of law enforcement and just making sure that we have what we need to do our jobs.
Right.
And so through the state, she granted us $1 million. From that, we were able to hire 3 investigators, a forensic analyst, and a prosecutor. And then we have other people within the office who are working with that as well. And so the whole goal is to identify human trafficking, to investigate it, and prosecute it. And they're doing some wonderful work, and we have some pretty big investigations going on right now where they're using all kinds of technology and resources and investigative techniques to be able to hold these people accountable.
Now, for anyone who may be living here in Kane County, Aurora, and hears about human trafficking in Kane County, how big of an issue is it? What's the scale of it happening in Kane County? What can you share with us?
So it's a significant issue, and we've seen it not only with sex trafficking, but also labor trafficking. And the way that we find out about it typically is because people report it to us. It's the whole, if you see something, say something.
Right.
And so if people believe that this is happening, they should call their local police department. Their local police departments are partnering with my Human Trafficking Unit because we're going to do the crux of the majority of the investigation for it.
Okay.
But that's how you report it to police, and then we'll follow up from there.
And when it comes to those human trafficking victims, what becomes of them? Or do they continue to help out with your office or different investigative teams? Is this also cross-county collaboration too? What's that like?
So we take a very trauma-informed approach when we work with victims because victims in human trafficking have usually been there for years and have been so abused that they don't look like a traditional victim for us. What we attempt to do in all of these cases is figure out how we can even go victimless. So it's through our investigation of what we find out, not having to bring a victim in. When we find a victim, we usually partner with organizations like Reclaim 13, Refuge for Women, and we're finding housing for them.
Right.
And preferably outside of our county and sometimes even outside of the state, because we don't want them to be close to where the abuses happen so that they're not familiar or even trying to go back into that. We try to really help them in the best way possible.
I think a lot of that too was shared at the Human Trafficking Summit. Some of what you just mentioned. There was a lot of stories about folks who once the information is passed on, they'd rather not relive
Right.
the trauma consistently and things like that. And then it becomes law enforcement's duty to, with legislation to see those changes enacted and then carried forward. And then when it comes to human trafficking, what happens to the people who are human trafficked? What kind of enforcement happens to them?
Well, so they're going to be arrested. We will ask for them to be detained because it is a detainable offense.
Okay.
And then we're going to do whatever we can to get the highest prison sentence for them, because these are people who are purposely harming individuals.
Right.
They want to do it, and it's a commodity that I've said before on here that never goes away. If you think about people who deal drugs, the drugs go away because a person uses them. When they're selling a person, that person isn't going away because they're just coming back. And so it's there's no limit to the amount of money that they try to make off of taking advantage of people. And so for us, we want them to be in prison as long as the law will allow them to be, because they are only going to continue to target the most vulnerable in our community.
Right. And how does a person make reports to about this if they feel that they've got something to share?
So they can call the non-emergency number of the police department in the city in which they live in. They can obviously call 911. It's not as emergent, so calling the non-emergency number is much more important. But they can also contact directly at my office. And so we have our website that has our contact information, and they're more than welcome to call us directly.
All right. And the link to the Kane County State's Attorney's office and website is in the description of this video as well. So we encourage you to go ahead and use that and share it if you need to. 9:13 is the time if you are just joining us. Now, let's move into the county budget process.
Whew.
The
Now you're just bringing
let's
my
do all the easy
PTSD
stuff,
right back.
Let's do the easy things.
Yes.
How's it going?
Well, so we're done, thankfully, and the budget has been passed. It was an awful, awful process, which is odd for it, because at this point, the majority of the county board members have been there for the past 5 years.
Shouldn't be this hard, right?
It should not be this hard. It was a very difficult process that threatened a lot of huge cuts in the beginning, and then suddenly money was, of course, found. We have money in reserves that are in excess of what we need to have, so part of those were used. I think the problem is at some point the county just really used too much of a focus on ARPA money or COVID money that we had before, which was going to run out because that was the design. It was supposed to be there for a need.
Right.
So the budget is now passed. We have been asked to cut $1.3 million, which is a pretty significant amount.
We've been, Kane County State Attorney's Office.
Yes, just my office in general was $1.3 million. I think the sheriff was about $3 to $5 million, and that's significant because we are law enforcement. We have to be there by statute. And when you're asking the people who are statutory players to have to cut significant amount, that means public safety is being cut. What my hope is for the board is that they understand that they have to find more revenue, because asking us to cut public safety is not the answer to anything. They did try with a public safety sales tax that failed, unfortunately, through the last referendum that we had, but they need to find revenue to support this, because I believe that Kane County is one of the safest counties out there. I think we are safe because of the initiatives that we do. The stuff that the sheriff has done in the jail in terms of providing treatment helps people not commit a crime when they get out of jail.
Right.
The diversion programs that we have, pre-arrest diversion, and now having 4 specialty courts, all goes to help people to stop committing crimes, because we're actually getting to the root of what is happening.
Right.
And then you have initiatives like the Human Trafficking Unit and our Child Exploitation Unit, which just really put horrible people behind bars where they deserve.
Right.
So taking more money from those initiatives is not the answer.
So when it comes to the process as well, your office is involved the whole time with the
Yes.
process when it comes to that? Okay.
So we're involved in two ways. One, I have to advocate for my people as the state's attorney, but I
Sure.
also provide legal advice to the county throughout the process for
Okay.
the entirety of it. So there's a very fine line between those two, but we've been pretty successful in terms of justifying why we need the budget we have, but also being able to provide the legal advice so that the county doesn't get sued because they're not providing the resources they should.
9:16 is the time if you are just joining us. Okay, and the next thing I want to talk about is the Deferred Prosecution Program. Now, for those who are unfamiliar with it, it's had its 30th anniversary this year.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. What's its genesis? What does it do?
So the idea behind it is that people commit crimes for a variety of reasons, but what we know is they commit it because of mental health issues, lack of resources, substance use disorder, sometimes just plain stupidity. And so when you commit a crime, you shouldn't be put in a situation where now you're going to be convicted, because that doesn't help anybody. The ability for a person to get a job, to get housing, to own their own business is all negatively affected if you're convicted of anything, especially if you do something when you're younger, like between 18 to 21, when we know people's brains are still forming.
Right.
So the idea behind this program is for first-time offenders. They can come in, they take accountability for what they did, which means they're admitting what they did. And then they're put on a contract. And in that contract, they may be asked to do a variety of different things. It may be substance use treatment. It may be domestic violence counseling. It could be fines and costs. It could be community service hours. It could be a letter of apology. It could be a restorative justice meeting. Because the idea is we're going to help find out what happened, have you take accountability, help get you whatever resources you need so you're not doing it again, and then you don't have a conviction on your record.
Right. Now, the deferred prosecution exists because there is in place the checks and balances, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But this is also, each county gets to decide what they have. There are some counties that don't have deferred prosecution at all. Kane County is one of the ones that have a lot of different types of deferred prosecution to give people that chance.
Every county doesn't have deferred prosecution?
No, it's not mandatory.
The light should go on.
Yes, it should, and that should be a statutory mandate that every state's attorney's office have that.
Why wouldn't? Is it because certain counties see no need for a deferred prosecution, or they, is there a logic behind it?
So it's based on the belief of the state's attorney, because we're the ones who get to decide the programming.
Okay.
And if you are a more conservative, tough on crime person, you believe that everybody should be convicted who commits a crime. Or you believe that the law is in place that allows supervision for certain offenses but not for other offenses.
Right.
So really it's the mindset of the prosecutor that's elected to that position to see whether or not they're going to have that type of programming.
Right. And 30 years of this program being around, what was the, can you share some of the success stories that have been around?
So we have had a lot of great success. I'm especially proud of our domestic violence diversion program, because that's something that I created in 2010 when I was an assistant state's attorney in the office. Because what we need to understand, and much like we're talking about with Kenton's Law, this is a generational cycle that happens.
Right.
Kids learn this from parents, and then kids become adults and they commit domestic violence offenses. And if we don't realize that our abusers now were once victims, we're just not doing what we should be doing. And so the domestic violence diversion program, the whole goal was within the first 3 months of the arrest, that's when the person has to be in the program.
Right.
Because we want that accountability portion. And then we're always making sure that they go through whatever treatment is best. So we have our domestic violence centers who are evaluating them to see what's the most appropriate type of treatment. Now I have to say, from our treatment providers, they have found that the people who go through our diversion program versus go through court where they plead guilty or found guilty and are ordered to do this treatment, our people are more successful because they're willing to go in already to say, yes, I did this. Yes, I have a problem and I need help.
Right.
And so that's one where it's been studied by Aurora University. They've come back. They found our recidivism rate for those individuals through our domestic diversion program are much lower than any of our other programs.
Right.
Because we're really getting to the root of that issue.
Yeah.
And so I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of our first-time weapons offender program. That was one that I created back in, I believe, 21, because we found a lot of people were charged with unlawful use of a weapon, which is a Class 4 felony, when they own the gun legally. They had a FOID, they just didn't have a conceal and carry, so they were carrying it or transporting it wrong. And if you think about the title, unlawful use of a weapon,
Right.
they're not using it, they're possessing it.
Right.
Now, that's recently been changed in our law where now it's unlawful possession and not use, but that only recently changed.
So that means that there have been who knows how many people charged with the use as opposed to it actually being possession.
Correct. And if you think about it, a Class 4 felony, you're convicted of this. Do you think anybody's going to hire a person who has unlawful use of a weapon?
As soon as
Class
they
4
read that,
felony?
no.
Exactly.
Right.
And so this program, again, had that huge accountability portion, because what we were doing at that time is also having these individuals meet with the police officers who arrested them so that the officers can talk about how dangerous it is to have that gun, especially when there could be a traffic stop, there could be anything that happens. And it was an education piece. And we're also helping and encouraging them to get their CCL, their conceal and carry, so that way they're now compliant with our law.
Right.
Because our laws are a lot different from other states in terms of having both a FOID and a conceal and carry, both of which cost money and a lot of time to get done.
Right.
And people sometimes don't understand the complexities.
Right. But it would be like in that case, though, if someone was charged, it'd be like retroactively kind of assisted or something to make them then compliant with the law.
Correct,
now?
yes.
Okay. All right.
And so it's the same thing where we put them on contract. If they did everything that they were supposed to do, the case is dismissed against them.
Okay.
And that included them going to apply for their CCL.
Okay. You know, when you're not a lawyer and you're trying to talk to a lawyer, it's like jousting up here. Like, whew.
You're doing great.
All right. Thank you. And then last thing I want to talk about is Duo Dog, Captain. Who's Duo Dog?
So Duo Dog is a program where we can get dogs for law enforcement or state's attorney's offices or other like-minded places where the dog is there to help. And so Captain is our Duo Dog,
All right.
and he is assigned to our Child Advocacy Center. The Child Advocacy Center investigates and prosecutes sex offenses against children,
Right.
as well as great bodily harm cases against kids. So having a dog that's there when children have to talk about the worst things that happen to them, and typically by family members, is just essential, because it's another way to give them a little bit of hope, a little bit of calm, something that distracts them from the pain.
Yep.
And so I'm very proud that the Child Advocacy Center, my attorneys and advocates that are there, they're the ones who really brought forth that initiative, put in the application for it. One of the investigators is actually the dog's handler, so Captain goes back with him every night and stays with him and his family, and it's just a great thing. We're always trying to expand what we do at the office, and
Right.
I think that's one of the greatest things that we've been able to do.
9:24 is the time. If you are just joining us, you're watching Good Morning Aurora, and we're here with Kane County State's Attorney Jamie Mosser, going over some of the highlights of the year 2025, which she is in the first year of her second term. So as we start to land this airplane, what's been, with all that we've talked about today and all that that you have going on, and so many different irons in the fire kind of stuff, as we get to the end of this year, look forward to 2026, what would you say has been the biggest success of this year, and what is the biggest goal for 2026?
So it's hard to say the biggest success, because I think my biggest success has to be the advocacy that I've done for my employees as well as the people of Kane County, because going to the state and asking for money, going to the county board and asking for money, doing all the research that we have as to why we need the units that we do or
Right.
the programming that we do, to me that is one of the biggest successes. And I've done that legislatively too, because as you know, having had me on the program, I'm constantly in Springfield talking about the laws like the Safety Act and the Pretrial Fairness Act, Karina's law. Having then created Kenton's law and having that passed, I think that's the advocacy that this county needs. And
Right.
I've been super proud of that. What I want to do for next year is significant. I really want to combine some of our courtrooms so that we're focusing more on domestic violence and DUI cases, because they're a large part of our cases.
Okay.
And I want to have all of those cases be in 3 different courtrooms so that the judge knows the law, the prosecutors know the law, and the public defenders who are in there do as well. Because the idea is to get them better treatment right from the beginning.
Right.
Because the quicker you get people into treatment, the safer everybody is. In a domestic violence situation, getting the offender treatment means the victim is safer. In a DUI case, getting them treatment means they're less likely to drive drunk and affect any random person on the road that they're in.
Right.
So that's my big focus, is to try to combine all of those to really do a much better focus on things that we know are treatment-oriented, and not something where we're just running them through a general felony or misdemeanor system, as we typically have done.
Right. Right.
So that's my big goal for next year.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on to the show and telling us about this, as always.
Thank you.
We've appreciated the work that you and your team have done collectively, for the folks in Kane County. And our program definitely looks forward to continuing to share the great news from your office and different parts of Kane County. So thank you very much.
I
Yep,
appreciate it.
And Christmas is coming up, so Merry Christmas to you
And
as
the same
well.
to you.
Yep.
Hopefully you'll get all your shopping done. I am going to scramble these next couple of days.
Yes, we'll be scrambling as well. And also, ladies and gentlemen, we hope that you guys have a great day and a very Merry Christmas coming up. Good Morning Aurora is still going to be around and showing you great programs during this holiday season, so keep staying tuned for great things. I want to say one more time, thank you very much to Kane County State's Attorney Mosser. You guys have a fantastic rest of the day and a very Merry Christmas. Take care of yourself and each other.